So what is it about the Jews in Russia that, I mean, I'm thinking about 14-year-olds, in another country in America, hear about their heritage. I'm not so sure that they'd be so quick to raise their hand and say, I want to have a bris, and keep on badgering the rabbi to get a bris. What is it about the Jews in Russia that you think is so different, is so full of this closeness, this warmth to Yiddishkeit?
It's a great question. I have to ask myself that as well. Like, why, they lived without anything. What's bringing them back? I think there's a concept that the Jewish soul is as strong as it needs to be. So when you're brought up in a country,
Mhm.
in a place that you have everything accessible, you have multiple synagogues to choose from, you have multiple schools to go to, you have many different kosher restaurants. You don't feel the need, I could go here, I could go there, or I could go anywhere, or I go nowhere. It doesn't really. But
Mhm.
when you're brought up in a place that some of these basic Jewish aspects of life don't exist, you have a thirst, and a neshama wants it. It wants to feel. And what I see is that people that deal with difficulties, they find inner strength to fight these, to come out strong and do some tremendously inspiring things that I myself, like when I was witnessing the bris of these boys, I was thinking, would I do a bris in such
Right.
circumstances? Never. Doesn't make sense. But why?
Mm.
I don't have that challenge, and therefore I don't have the strength. God gives a person exactly the strength he needs to deal with the challenges he's given. So for
Mm.
me, I don't have that challenge, and therefore I'm not given the tools to deal with it. But here
Mm.
they're given, and I think what it is this I always wonder, and what comes to mind is they lived through so many difficult times. There's a certain Jewish pride that existed in Jews here. When it was impossible to live and practice the Jew, what did they do? They moved Judaism to the kitchen, and suddenly for them, Judaism became eating gefilte fish. Gefilte fish is
Mm.
in Russian called farshirova riba. Every Jew here, especially the Babis, you ask them farshirova riba, their
Really?
eyes light up. That for them is like
Oh,
everything. There's a Jewish dish called farshmak. Doesn't sound like a very good word, right?
right.
It's like something you Christians say, farshmak. What's farshmak? It's ground it's a different type of fish and different types of bread and apple. You see the ingredient you never want to touch. Like for me as a
Right.
Canadian, I'd never touch it. But for them, this is what they grew up with, a cheap fish that they were able to mash up and make something. And that was the Jewish food, simis. So for them, that Judaism became in the kitchen because no one could oppress you and tell you don't eat Jewish food. So for them, matzah was every year. Comes Pesach, we're going to eat
Right.
matzah. We're going to go to Shana. So somehow they always had this pride. It was dormant.
So
It
they
was
still have
embers.
interesting. So even though they didn't have the education, you mean the culture still stayed in terms of the foods that they ate?
So Jews in Russia, for the most part, in the hardest of times, food was always what the Jewish kitchen, as they called it, existed,
Mm.
and to this day it's passed on. And my Bobby's recipe. Again, I can't pinpoint. I just think these when you're given a challenge, you're given the inner
Mm.
strength to deal. So finally, they're neshamas for the first time. I mean, a neshama, the soul, is equal in every person. A rabbi, a non-rabbi, someone who's observant. Now we all have the same holy soul within us. It just
Mhm.
that it's dormant. There's still the embers there, and once it felt like it was being fed, it was given a little bit of what it wanted, and had this huge desire to do something big for God, something for the Jewish people, and it went, and they followed too. These boys that did it back then, breast and circumcised, they got circumcised. They today are rabbis. They today are leading communities. Not all of them, but some of them, and all over the world.
Incredible.
Why? Because they went to camp 25 years ago. So they impact, and we know
Wow.
and the whole concept of camp was the Rebbe told us that camp has the biggest impact on kids. School, Jewish education is vital, especially today when with anti-Semitism in the world, you need to give your kids a Jewish education. It will pay off years to come. That being said, the impact a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week camp has on a child in some ways is stronger and more impactful than a full year in a Jewish school because the Rebbe, they're 24 hours in the camp site and the campgrounds where you're able to give them all the Jewish traditions and connect with them on levels that you don't connect with in just regular formal education. So camp was
Right.
incredible and it had a great impact on me, on the kids.
Wow. Wow.